Hey guys, I'm a little dark. Got my screen all crazy looking too. Okay, we're on chapter 17, which remember at the end of chapter 16, not Mimi, Tiffany and Annabelle are in this huge fight with each other. They're not speaking to each other, and I predict that Mimi is in the middle of this. She's going to be the root of all this. But I'm so excited because chapter 17 is called Mean Mimi Meets Her End. But Annabelle looks mighty mad on this page, so I really hope that her and Tiffany can mend their relationship. All right, ready? Annabelle didn't speak to Tiffany for an entire week, and she spoke as little as possible to Auntie Sarah. She had intended not to speak to her at all, but living in such close quarters made it difficult. Remember, Mean Mimi came to Annabelle and said, I heard Tiffany and Auntie Sarah talking, and they're going to go on an exploration without you because you're a fraidy cat. Anyway, Annabelle was angrier with Tiffany than with Auntie Sarah. She understood why Auntie Sarah might not want to go on not want her to go on any explorations. She was disappointed, but she understood. Tiffany, however, had betrayed Annabelle. Annabelle did not understand that, and she thought it was unforgivable. I don't think my neighbor's dogs like this chapter very much, do they? That long, lonely weekend was even worse for Annabelle than the many years before she had a best friend. No best friend at all was better than a best friend who had become a traitor. Annabelle spent hours lying on her bed, thinking and remembering. She remembered the first time she had met Tiffany, when the Funcrafts and their dream house had been delivered to the Palmers in a large cardboard carton. She remembered reading Auntie Sarah's diary with Tiffany and forming Selp. She remembered when Tiffany told her that she had a friendship necklace. And if she had a friendship necklace, she would share it with Annabelle. So I think that's what this picture is. She's thinking back to all these times with Tiffany. Ha, thought Annabelle. If I had that necklace now, I'd give it back to Tiffany after I'd scratched traitor on her half of the heart. Best traitor. During this miserable week, Annabelle kept track of the times Mean Mimi was spotted in Kate's room. 4 visits in all. Once to call Kate again while she slept. Once to make another nighttime mess on the floor of Kate's room. Once to deposit a cat toy in the doll's parlor. They managed to hide it before Kate noticed it. And once to announce to Annabelle that she, Princess Mimi, was Tiffany Funcraft's new best friend. Yeah, right. The dolls grew afraid that their secret life might be exposed at any moment and that they would be able to do nothing about it. Good idea, Annabelle, said Bobby crossly one night. Doing nothing about Mean Mimi is working just great. Annabelle felt equally cross. As if trapping her was such a good idea, she replied. That didn't work either. Children, Auntie Sarah called softly from her room. Please. Oh, be quiet, muttered Annabelle, but not so that anyone could hear her. That was on a Monday night. On Tuesday night, there was no sign of Mimi. She's probably in Nora's room, torturing the Funcrafts, thought Annabelle. Or maybe she's whispering with Tiffany, her new best friend. But on Wednesday night, there was no sign of Mimi either, nor on Thursday night, nor on Friday night. Do you suppose maybe she's gone? Ventured Papa, after Kate had fallen asleep. Do you think she's left, perhaps for good? It's possible, replied Mama. I guess anything is possible. How could she leave? Asked Nanny. Annabelle thought of her conversation in the attic with Tiffany, of the idea of Mimi walking boldly down a street in the big outside world of the humans. She didn't want to frighten her family, though, so she said maybe she decided to go back to BJ's house. Maybe she decided to punish Tiffany and me enough. She'd punished me and Tiffany enough and left for school in Kate's backpack. Punished you? Repeated Auntie Sarah. Annabelle wouldn't look at her aunt, but she said, yeah, we ruined her life at BJ's. I think maybe she followed us here to teach us a lesson, but didn't plan to stay. Annabelle's family looked both hopeful and thoughtful. That would mean, said Mama, that she's making life miserable again for Callie's dolls. Maybe, maybe not, Annabelle answered. She doesn't have much control over them anymore. But Annabelle knew that Mean Mimi could still be dangerous to dolls everywhere. Perhaps, said Uncle Doll, our lives can return to normal now. What do you think? Do you think she's leaving that easily? I don't think she's giving up that easily. Saturday afternoon was raw and rainy with an autumn wind that whistled around the corners of the Palmer's house, rattling the windows and creeping through cracks. Kate closed herself up into her room, curled up in her bed, covered herself with a blanket, and began to read Half Magic. Ordinarily, Annabelle would have enjoyed a day like this, all cozy and quiet with Kate nearby, but Nora had secretly played in the doll's house that morning, and she had left Tiffany and her parents in the parlor with Annabelle. Mom and Dad, Funcraft, were lying on the floor, and Annabelle and Tiffany were sitting jammed together in an armchair. So they're still fighting, and they haven't talked to each other still, and look, Nora was in there, and they're all stuck together inside the dollhouse. They don't look very happy about that, do they? Each had quietly pinched the other 5 times already, and before Kate had entered the room, Annabelle had whispered to Tiffany, "Traitor," and Tiffany had repeated, "Liar." Now Annabelle could neither pinch nor whisper, not with Kate so close at hand, but she could feel anger bubbling inside her, and imagined she could feel Tiffany's anger bubbling as well. Annabelle tried to concentrate on Kate. She wished Nora would come into the room so that Kate would read aloud to her. Then she wished that Kate would leave again so Annabelle could pinch Tiffany again. Then she forgot about Kate and began a list of all the things she hated about Tiffany. Number 1 on the list was, she's a traitor. So were numbers 2 and 3. Annabelle was working on number 4 when she thought she saw movement on the floor near the head of Kate's bed. She glanced to the left, and what she saw made her eyes widen. She wondered if Tiffany saw it too, and she tried to send a silent message to her to look to the left. Look to the left. Creeping out from under Kate's bed was Mimi. She's back. She never went anywhere. She was just hiding for a few days. Uh-oh. She paused and peered up at the bedspread hanging over the side. Then she crossed the room to Kate's bookcase. Now remember, Kate's sitting in her bed. She's reading right now, okay? Then she crossed the room to Kate's bookcase, just ran through the room with Kate lying right there on the bed. Annabelle couldn't stand it any longer. She was going to have to break a teeny little rule herself. She wanted to make sure that she wasn't the only person watching what was going on, so she nudged Tiffany and twisted slightly to look at her. Tiffany gave Annabelle the smallest of nods. Then, as the girls turned their attention back to Mimi, Tiffany slid her hand into Annabelle's, and that's how they sat and watched the most frightening and most amazing thing either of them had ever seen or has ever seen since. Mimi ran to Kate's bookcase, like a bookshelf, and began to climb up it. She was no more than 10 feet in front of Kate. If Kate had so much as glanced up from Half Magic, she would have seen a small doll in a princess costume climbing swiftly up her bookcase, using the books themselves as stepping stones towards the top. "Please don't look up, Kate," Annabelle chanted silently, and she felt Tiffany's grip tighten around her hand. When Mimi reached the 4th shelf from the bottom, she turned around and stood on a paperback book that was laying on its side. Stood and faced Kate Palmer. "Kate!" Mimi called, and Annabelle cringed to hear how loudly Mimi could shout. She shouted out her name. "She's in the room." Kate heard her, which didn't surprise Annabelle, but scared her nevertheless, and as Kate looked up from the bookshelf, 2 things happened at the very same time. Mean Mimi leapt from the shelf, and the door to Kate's room was flung open as Nora entered. Kate turned around to glare at Nora and said sternly, "Nora, how many times have I told you to knock first?" But Nora only pointed at Mean Mimi and screamed, "That dolly! She just jumped off your bookshelf! I saw her! Kate looked at the floor where Mean Mimi was now lying motionless, eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. "Oh, Nora," she said, "she couldn't have jumped. She must have fallen somehow." Annabelle knew that Kate hadn't actually seen Mimi jump. She had heard someone call her name, and then Nora had burst into the room. Still, Kate slid off her bed very slowly, and when she began to examine Mean Mimi, she was frowning. She jumped, Nora was crying. "She couldn't have," Kate repeated. but she picked Mean Mimi up gingerly, holding the edge of her sleeve between her thumb and her forefinger. What do you notice about Mimi right now? How does she kind of look? She did it. I saw her. Nora, stop that, said Kate, but Annabelle thought she sounded nervous rather than cross. Just, please be quiet. Nora stopped talking. She sniffled and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Whose doll is this anyways? Asked Kate, still allowing Mimi to dangle from her fingers. I don't know, replied Nora, who sounded as if she might start to cry again. I don't have a princess doll. Kate dropped Mimi on her desk and led Nora to the bed. Don't worry about it, she said kindly. Here, look at this book. I just started it. It's all about magic, and it's really good. I'll read to you for a while. Kate and Nora sat together on the bed for a long time. Annabelle didn't take her eyes off Mimi. She barely even listened to the story, but although she stared at Mimi for half an hour while Kate read to Nora and then for another 3 hours as the afternoon dragged on, she didn't see Mimi so much as blink. Annabelle stared at Mimi while the Palmers ate their dinner downstairs. She stared at her during the stormy fall evening while the Palmers talked on the phone and watched television when Kate and Nora took their baths and got ready for bed. Kate had been asleep for a full hour when Annabelle dared to stir. She turned to Tiffany and whispered, I haven't seen Mimi move. Have you? Nope. Slowly, the rest of the dolls joined Annabelle and Tiffany and Mom and Dad Funcraft in the parlor. They stared down at Mimi. Several of them had seen her jump. Those who hadn't had listened to Kate and Nora and figured out some of what had happened. Annabelle and Tiffany filled them in on the rest. She hasn't moved since Nora saw her land on the floor, Annabelle said at last. She's definitely in doll state. Uncle Doll said thoughtfully, could anyone see Kate's clock when Mimi jumped? I could, said Tiffany. It was about 2:30. All right, said Uncle Doll. We'll see what happens at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. I hope she doesn't do anything foolish when she's released from doll state. There's everyone looking at her. So they think that she's in doll state, which would mean that she's stuck as a regular doll for 24 hours. So at 2:30 the next afternoon, we'll see what happens. Kate did not move Mimi from her desk. All the next day, Annabelle watched both Mimi and the clock. She expected just about anything to happen at 2:30, especially since the Palmers had decided to spend the day across town with Kate and Nora's cousin, so the house was empty of humans. The very last thing Annabelle expected Mimi to do was nothing. But that's what happened at 2:30. Nothing. Are you sure Kate's clock said 2:30 yesterday? Uncle Doll asked Tiffany. Positive. The dolls watched Mimi for another hour and still nothing happened. She lay on Kate's desk in the position in which Kate had dropped her, an arm flung over her head, one leg across the other. When Kate went to bed that night, Mimi continued to lie motionless on the desk. She was still there in the morning. As soon as the Palmers had left the house, the dolls and Tiffany and her parents once again gathered in the parlor and regarded Mimi. What do you think? Said Annabelle, in an awed whisper. It's been lots longer than 24 hours. She hasn't moved a muscle, said Auntie Sarah softly. Maybe she got hurt when she jumped off the shelf, said Bobby. She doesn't look hurt, replied Mama. I don't see any cracks. She's all in one piece. After this, the dolls were quiet for a very long time. Finally, Annabelle decided to say the scary thing she's been thinking. Do you suppose she could be in PDS? Remember what that stands for? Permanent doll state. Nanny gasped and her hand flew to her mouth. Annabelle glanced at Tiffany. The girls were talking to one another again, but in a cautious way because they had not yet discussed their fight. PDS? Tiffany said in a tiny voice. I don't know. How can you tell if someone's in PDS? Let's go poker, said Bobby brightly. Bobby, admonished Nanny. Well, someone has to take a look at her, he said. Reluctantly, the grown-ups agreed, and in the end, everyone except Nanny and Baby Betsy made their way across Kate's room to her bed and finally onto her desk. They tiptoed through the scattered pencils and markers, a slinky and 3 china cats, and they were standing over Mean Mimi. For a moment, they merely stared at her. Then Annabelle stuck her foot out and poked Mimi's head with the tip of her shoe. Nothing. Tiffany, feeling braver, leaned over and shook Mimi's shoulder. Nothing. Mimi, wake up, yelled Bobby. Nothing. Is this PDS? Asked Tiffany. Suppose it must be, replied Auntie Sarah. So it's real, whispered Annabelle. It's really real. She looked at her aunt's solemn face and felt as if a chilly wind were blowing through the bedroom. I guess it's good for the dolls at BJ's house, she said after a while. I guess, agreed Tiffany, looking shaken. Here's a picture. It's a big picture of everyone looking at her. So this is Mama Doll, Papa Doll, Mom and Dad Funcraft, Tiffany, Auntie Sarah, Uncle Doll, Bobby, Annabelle, and Mean Mimi. In permanent doll state, they think. What do you think we should do about her? Asked Mom Funcraft. I'm afraid we can do nothing, replied Auntie Sarah. We have to leave her right here where Kate put her. And there lay Mimi for 2 more days in full view of the dolls, an uncomfortable reminder of things they did not yet understand. So we think Mean Mimi might be in permanent doll state. Oh my goodness. Did anybody predict that would happen? Because I sure didn't. Woo! Crazy, isn't it? All right, so we have one more chapter left in this book, chapter 18, which is called Home Sweet Home Once Again. It's kind of a weird name for a chapter because everyone seems to be kind of at their houses already, so we'll see what happens and finish it up. All right, see you guys later.